we had this morning to Congressman Scott Perry from the 10th Congressional District. Good morning, Congressman. How are you?
Hey, I'm pretty well throughout all this, Gary, and congratulations on your sojourn. It is remarkable and tough work.
Yeah, it is. It's
yeah.
But I tell you what,
it's
a good reason to get to the golf course sometime every day now. I can use that. That's my exercise. So I do a lot of walking, and my wife has bought into that so far. I had a friend the other day I was listening to at the golf course who said, my wife still thinks that a round of golf takes 7 hours. So he said, I don't want to ruin that. So he sticks around and has a few beers, and I don't do that. But anyway, lots going on right now, Congressman, and obviously what's going on around the country with the protests, and then i.e. Some of the extensions beyond that with the violence and the looting and so forth. How do you view this? I mean, I'm looking at it, I'm thinking to myself, okay, obviously we've been pent up here for a while. So a lot of that's exploding. Obviously, there are people who are really upset about things that have been going on in the country for some time. So I think we have to give that some credence. Obviously, the killing of George Floyd the other day, it doesn't look good at all. An overreaction. How do you take all this swirl that's going on right now? How do you try to start to compartmentalize that or try to figure it out from your particular vantage point?
Well, for me, look, I do compartmentalize it to break down one piece at a time. And of course, like you said, we have been pent up. The weather's changing. People want to come. People want to get out, and they've got a lot of energy that has been pent up. And so that's good and bad. Of course, the untimely death of George Floyd, and I will just tell you, as you know, Gary, I stand with law enforcement every time I get an opportunity to. In this case, it just, I don't believe in trial by videotape or trial by mob or any of that stuff. But what I saw, I could barely stand to watch it, and I was so angry and so disappointed. I feel like George Floyd, regardless of whatever he did, died at the hands of the police unnecessarily, and it is unacceptable. And, when you have the authority that the police have, you must exercise restraint. And so that's how I feel about that. I think the protests are warranted, and that's a right of American citizens. But I'm gonna stop short, very short of when it turns violent. You start burning people's property, you start looting, all the lawlessness and the escalation of those type of things. That I think they're incredibly counterproductive, and just sow the seeds of division. And then finally, in the face of all that stuff, the violent protest and the destruction, the looting, all that stuff, I say to myself, I don't know what else can be done. I mean, the officer has been arrested. He's been charged. I guess, as far as I know, there's a local investigation into the other ones that were standing by. There's a federal investigation. What else can be done to assuage this situation? At the same time, I do understand that this happens far too often, and people are frustrated. They say, well, what do we have to do to make this end? And I think that's a reasonable question. I don't think burning your own town down or some other town helps, but it definitely focuses attention on this issue. At the same time, Gary, I mean, I think 16 dead in Chicago this weekend. That's been going on for a long time, and seems to not abate either. And so this is a big societal issue that I'm not sure government can solve. I think that this comes to our individual homes and how we approach things as people, as Americans, as citizens.
Do you have a sense
respecting one another?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Do you have a sense? I've read a lot of articles this weekend, including a very insightful one by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who's a very thoughtful individual, and that there's a systemic racism in the country that our nation just doesn't get, and that I sit here and I think about how I've viewed race over the years, and I think, and I don't view race. I mean, I was brought up not to view race at all. But the point being, in trying to open our minds a little bit, do you think there is a systemic racism when it comes to the way we police in this country, when it comes to the way we look at other people who are different than us in color in this particular case? do you think there is a suppression of people being able to push ahead in this culture, in this society? Is this a failure of capitalism somehow? I mean, all those questions, again, kind of swirl around. I hate to throw so many at you at once, but I'll let you kind of separate them out.
I would just tell you that the numbers that I read don't bear that out.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that I meet, that's not evidence
Right.
in them. And it, like you, I was not raised to be that way, and it's certainly my long-term in military uniform. You dealt with people from all walks, colors, creeds, races, religions, and you just that was just not part of the equation. You had a mission to work on together, and you just did that, and none of that other stuff mattered. And again, like I said, the numbers don't bear it out. But when these cases that are sensational, and when I say sensational, obviously it's not as an accolade, but it's just so it grabs our attention, is what I mean by that. In the case of like George Floyd, I think it is fomented to make us feel like that we are that, and I don't think
that everybody feels that way. Yeah, that's kind of the impression you're supposed to have. Yeah,
I don't think most people. I don't meet people that if they are that way, they certainly don't express it to me.
Right.
They just want to live their life. They don't care what the other guy's race or religion or whatever. They hope that everybody's doing well, and that we're all in this kind of together, and that those are the people that I meet and interact with, and quite honestly, the statistics just don't bear out that these law enforcement agencies have this problem. But again, when you have one like this where it's on videotape, it's very clear to see to those who are watching that this man lost his life unnecessarily and without any justification whatsoever.
Welcome back. WSBA Morning News with Gary Sutton with Congressman Scott Perry from the 10th Congressional here this morning. Congressman, I read before I went on vacation last week about an investigation you were calling for here in the state of Pennsylvania, I think regarding some of the senior citizens or the nursing homes. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I find it incredible that there's not more interest in the fact that our COVID-19 death rate in Pennsylvania runs at about 70% of those deaths. So 70% of COVID-19 deaths in Pennsylvania come from elder care facilities, whether it's a senior, whether it's a nursing home or an assisted living facility. And the fact that other states, many other states, haven't experienced that statistic. They don't have that number, that experience at all. And these are lives, Gary. These are people that are family members and our loved ones. And are they dying unnecessarily because of a policy particular to Pennsylvania, but not only particular to Pennsylvania? New York and I think Connecticut, some other states have done the same thing, where the state government has mandated that the nursing homes take in COVID-19 positive individuals. And the one thing that we knew when we didn't know much about coronavirus or this novel coronavirus in the early stages was that it unduly affected and had a high mortality rate for elderly individuals, especially if they had other what we call comorbidities, as you know.
Right.
And I'm just shocked that there's not any interest, or it doesn't seem to be much interest in that. And then to add insult to injury, so the nursing homes are forced to take these individuals who are infected into their population, which is the most vulnerable of any population. And then the state attorney general says that he's considering prosecuting them for murder. Meanwhile, we're not looking at all at the policy and the folks that made the policy that forced the nursing homes to do this. The reason I called for a federal investigation is because with that claim from the state attorney general, it sure doesn't feel like or seem like nursing homes are going to get a fair shake in this thing. The nursing home work is something that a lot of people have very mixed emotions about. But for a person who has visited many of these and kind of know it a little bit from an official's capacity, it's hard work, and the profit margins oftentimes are not very, very great. And they were left without equipment, without expertise. without facilities and forced to take people into their care.
Well, and I
And,
think one of the things too that was troublesome to a lot of us as we read about the various things that we did seem to have a quick response plan in place that was not followed in the very beginning. And as you mentioned, rightfully, many people who came out of the hospital were sent back into nursing homes, knowing full well that this was a much more susceptible place to potentially get the coronavirus than not. And so one has to wonder, why was that the case, and why did we not use things that we had? Obviously, we had done some decent planning here for this, but we didn't follow those plans until really within the last 2 weeks. The governor started to talk about the nursing homes. That for a lot of people are saying, well, protect our most vulnerable and let the rest of us who maybe have the antibodies and so forth, get out there and operate in a responsible way. That certainly adds to that argument, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does, and that's the flip side of this equation. Of course, we're concerned, and rightly so, that we have these so many fatalities in Pennsylvania due to coronavirus. But again, 70% of it are happening in these facilities. Yet we're making policies for the rest of the 12 and 3/4 million Pennsylvanians, partially at least based on that, I would imagine, and it doesn't seem appropriate for the rest of society to be generally shut down. None of it seems appropriate, and there were options. I mean, you couldn't visit, in many cases, your loved one in a nursing facility, and yet they were forced to take these individuals. I mean, we could have found. I happen to know, because I know many members of the state legislature. Obviously, there were other options offered to the administration, which, I don't want to be hypercritical here, but they just weren't taken. But lives are on the line here, and they're still on the line because this policy remains in effect at this moment. Unless somebody can tell me it's been countermanded, it's still in effect right now. It just seems completely backwards.
About 1 minute to go. About 1 minute to go. I want to ask you this question. Two questions in one, and it's probably unfair to ask you to answer these in a minute, but I'll try. Number one, have governors taken too much power unto themselves and not shared it with the state legislature in this COVID-19 time? And I think the second one is there going to be an accountability on trashing small business in this country? Because I'm going up and down streets looking at the for sale signs and out of business and all those kind of things. I mean, there are people who have lost their livelihoods as a result of this, obviously. Those two thoughts here to add.
Yeah, I do think that in some cases the governors, the administration, regardless of where you are, too much authority for too long. So it's similar to the federal government. The president has a similar authority, but only for 60 days, right? So in this case, I think that is potentially true, and I think the legislature is going to and needs to look at that. These small businesses, it is so heartbreaking to see what has happened to them, and I don't know that there's going to be an accountability or a reciprocity, so to speak. When you take somebody's livelihood away forever, I'm not sure that it can ever be fully compensated because there's more to it than just the money, as you know, Gary. This is people pour their hearts and their souls into their business. It's who they are. Especially these family businesses that have gone from generation to generation, too. Yeah. Congressman, appreciate you being with us this morning. Can't answer all the questions today, but we appreciate you taking a shot at all the ones we had, and we look forward to talking to you again very, very soon. Thanks so much, Gary. You have stay safe, all right? Thank you very much. You too, Congressman. Very much. You too, Congressman. Very much.